Welcome to the Poetry of Predicament podcast, a podcast for people brave enough to face humanity's challenges and problems, and most importantly, our numerous predicaments. The Poetry of Predicament is a podcast meant to inspire us to bring forth grace, beauty, and connection with the web of life in the face of a predicament-laden world. Join me this week in welcoming Margo's Healing Corner to the Poetry of Predicament podcast. Beautiful. All right. Well, I am really happy to be hosting this particular episode of the Poetry of Predicament podcast, and speaking with someone I've never met before, but I've had a chance to follow her work for a while now. Given the population who usually watches these podcasts, chances are you already know about Margo and Margo's Healing Corner. And also, you've now, Margo, started to do campfire chats and so on. Let me just read the official intro that you've sent me, Margo, so I can just give the folks who haven't heard of you a bit of a picture of you, and then I'd love to hear how, in addition to what you've written here, how else you'd like to be seen and known. But we'll get there in just a moment. So, Margo is a hypnotist, holistic life coach, empathic spiritual healer. Margo of Margo's Healing Corner brings a wide background and range of experiences to any conversation. Since she became aware of abrupt climate change and the impending demise of our planet, Margo decided to devote her time to educating others through videos and live shows with updates to the melting Arctic sea ice, greenhouse gas levels, and other climate-related topics. Time is short. We're in the midst of the 6th mass extinction, and near-term human extinction is at hand. Margo hosts a live call-in radio show, Campfire Chats with Margo, and that's, I believe, on YouTube. You'll give us the details on that in just a few moments. And that gives people an opportunity to interact with others who are aware and of like mind. She also offers one-on-one coaching to help people prepare mentally, emotionally, and spiritually for the final journey. Margo, welcome to the Poetry of Predicament. It's so great to have you here.
Thank you, Dean. I so appreciate you contacting me and inviting me to be on your podcast.
Great.
I'm happy to be here.
Well, there's an awful lot of ground that I'd like to cover, but let me just start with, is there anything, now that it's a little bit after you sent me that bio and now you've heard it read, is there anything else that you'd like to say that reflects a way that you'd like to be known and seen in this world?
Well, I think I come at this whole climate change angle, climate change subject and near-term human extinction and everything from a little bit different perspective, and I'm bringing a spiritual perspective in that I don't think is normally addressed, because I believe everybody comes from their own experiences, and we all have our own experiences. People who have a certain religious background, they have their own experiences. Some people might not have a religious background. Some people might be more connected with just nature. Some people meditate, some people don't. And I've had a wide range of paranormal and otherworldly experiences kind of all my life, and am able to communicate with other realms and other dimensions, and that's really shaped who I am, and the way that I'm able to have a broad perspective and kind of be more accepting of what's coming, because I believe we are all great spiritual beings here having a human experience. And I do believe that there are realms beyond this. It's not just 3D, and that, you know, the more we can go within and be more aware of these realms in ourselves while we're here living in these 3D bodies, the more we will be prepared for what I call the final journey, when we step out of this reality and step over to what's waiting for us. And I don't think it's anything to be afraid of. I've worked in hospice and sat with people and prayed with them and, you know, helped them cross over. And it's a beautiful thing. And I just come from that different angle, and that I don't think other people are aware of. And so, you know, it's just a little bit more a broader and different perspective.
Got it. So I'm curious, would you say just a little bit about how you had your woke moment? What is it that cracked your perception open to what I might say is a predicament-laden world? And if you would put it in your own words, like, what was the realization that started you on the track you're on?
Yeah, how did I get to stage 5,
Yeah,
basically?
exactly. We're going to get there as well with the Paul Chifurka levels of
Right,
awareness.
right. Well, like I said, you know, I've been communicating with other beings and realms and stuff for a long time. And back in 2008 and 2009, I received um, 16 messages in from Mother Earth. I communicated with Mother Earth, the soul of the earth. I call her the Great One, and she gave me 16 specific messages about how the end was coming. And she outlined it in very, very specific terms of, you know, there are going to be the cell phone towers and this and that and on and on and on. And this was in 2008 and 2009. And she calls it wrapping up all the timelines, and that she will be leaving, and that when she leaves, she'll gather the humans up with her and will be leaving with her. And I believe that the time is short. And also, around that time, I got messages from the trees that they were leaving. I communicate with trees as well, and they were talking to me. And I had a favorite tree in the forest that I would go to and communicate with. And this one day, she told me that she was going to be leaving, and that the trees were going to be leaving because it wasn't going to be safe for them to be here any longer. And I perceive the trees as cosmic messengers and as beings of light, because, you know, they're there and they conduct the energy from the cosmos down through their bodies, through their branches and the trunks and the roots and everything down into the earth. And then they take the energy back up from Mother Earth and send it back out to the universe. So I do believe that they are special beings and they are our guardians. And when she told me they were going to be leaving, I was just heartbroken. I'm like, you know, you can't, you know, we can't live without you. And then I noticed after that that a lot of trees started dying, and it was just epidemic. And then, you know, then I went through this stage of, well, you know, just this feeling of deep down inside, like there was something really bad wrong with everything, not just with the trees, but with all of existence. And I've always kind of felt like I would live in the end times. And I didn't know why I felt that way, but I've always felt that way. And then, um, then then this is where, you know, I say, and then I met Guy McPherson. And
Uh,
it's almost like, you know, everybody says, eventually they say, and then I heard a talk that he gave or saw a video or something. And as soon as I read his blog and, you know, I read most of the long paper that he wrote, and it just all made sense.
mhm.
It all made sense to me. And here he was, a scientist, you know, coming forward and basically saying everything that I had channeled from the soul of the earth. And I'm like, oh, okay, this totally makes sense. And this, it explains so many things. And then I interviewed him the first time in March of 2017, and then I interviewed him again recently. It was back in May. But that interview back in March of 2017 was really pivotal for me because, you know, it kind of brought everything home. Well, you know how it is when you're talking to someone, it's a whole different experience because you're experiencing their world. You know, you're in their mind and their psyche with them as you're interviewing and you're talking. And so you can't help but be affected by whoever you're interviewed with or by. Or I mean, it's this whole tapestry. We're all interconnected. And then things started shifting for me, and I'd say I've hit a couple of different levels since then, and it's an onward journey. And even though I hit stage 5 a long time ago and accepted, it's like levels of awareness and levels of acceptance, and you never finish accepting because you never finish learning because there's more being revealed all the time.
I got it. Margo, let me just pause you for just a moment. And for those who might not have listened to your campfire talk last time around, you brought up this piece of writing from a man named Paul Chafurka, and he calls it the climbing the ladder of awareness. And he starts us at level 1 of being dead asleep. And rather than reading the whole thing, I will be posting a link to this in the show notes for this particular interview. But anyway, level 1 is dead asleep. So that's pretty self-explanatory. It's people who are, through willful ignorance or some other way, just not aware that anything's going on unusually.
That's about 98% of the world.
Yes. And then awareness, number 2, level of awareness, number 2, awareness of one fundamental problem. So, you know, it could be climate change or overpopulation and so on. Level 3 of 5 is awareness of many problems. So able to expand to include not just that singular one that might have kind of cracked the person open or into awareness, but actually able to include a number of them. Level 4 is the awareness of the interconnections between the many problems. So starting to reconnect and expand to include themselves in the web of life. And then level 5, awareness that the predicament encompasses all aspects of life. And that's what I was hearing you say, that that's the level you truck in as a matter of course these days.
Hmm.
Is there anything you'd like to say about that level of awareness model, or would you like to move on?
No, that's, I kind of broke it down in a short outline like that too when I talk to people in that show, because you can't read every single little detail. But I do encourage people to go to the full document
Yeah.
because it really expands and helps people understand that it's normal to go through periods of grieving, and you'll go through periods where you'll be so overwhelmed and grieving and everything, and then like the next day you'll be like, oh well, I think I can handle it another day. and then it'll be different, and then you'll get another new piece of climate news, like, oh God, there's more methane coming up out of the permafrost than we knew,
Yeah.
or I'll look at the sea ice and there's a brand new hole that's just melted through, or now my latest thing, I just found out on the NASA Worldview website, I just found out how to put in the layer of ice, surface ice temperature.
Hmm.
I just saw that last night, and I'll be posting that in my next update, and it's like, it's all melting. And, I think it's premature for us to think that we're not going to have a blue ocean event this year. I know that Guy McPherson and some others say, oh, we're not going to have it, but I think it's premature. Oh, and another thing I wanted to cover before we get too far along is today I had a new way of reframing all of this and thinking about all of it. And a couple of things, I think we focus on details way too much. And we focus on specific events way too much. Like everyone's saying, well, if we don't have the blue ocean event this year, we're okay for next year, so we can just party and, it'll be life as usual. And so they're focusing on that one event or that one date, and it's like, well, even if we don't have the blue ocean event, we're in big trouble, and that's not going away.
Yeah.
And so I had a thought as a result of looking at all this data and looking back at the Navy graphs of the sea ice thickness at certain times, like the same time, the same month, the same day, but just previous years, is that the ice has been thinning greatly up there over the last few years. And I'm thinking that this is a season. It's not just a season of the year, but this whole melting and retreat of the ice is Mother Earth's season of retreat and Mother Earth's change. And, in nature, things happen gradually, and it's not, you don't go from summer to fall and boom, everything is different overnight. It's a gradual shift, and different years it will exhibit things a little bit differently. So I'm looking at this more of this blue ocean event. It's more of a season, over a several year period. And I think it was probably thin enough last year to constitute, in my mind, what the bad effects of a blue ocean event, because we started seeing all this crazy weather, and then we're getting all these superstorms that they said would happen, and it's awful, and people are dying around the world, and the animals are dying around the world, and the trees and the fish, and the ocean is messed up, and we're in the middle of it.
Yeah.
And just to say, well, we're not going to hit blue ocean event doesn't mean anything in my mind. I'm going to keep moving forward. I'm going to keep tracking the sea ice. I'm going to keep doing my climate cast updates, and I'm going to keep helping people explore their own inner awareness and get their spiritual houses in order for whenever the final journey is for them, because no one knows the day or the hour.
Yeah. So, Margo, let me just recap a little bit because you've just covered a lot of ground. It seems like you and I might have had some similarities in our kind of awakening and then listening for the calling of the times for each of us. You described how once you got a sufficient amount of information and you were really inspired to know more and to engage and to really find out and to be present with what's really going on the planet. That's how I heard it anyway. And you have manifested that in a pretty unusual and remarkable way. You've chosen, not being a climate scientist, like I'm not a climate scientist, we both seem to have chosen ways of engaging with the science and with the information in such a way that we can relay the information that others have really put together and keep putting together and keep reporting out. But if we waited for mainstream media to provide any of this, it will never come.
I will be dead by then.
Right, exactly. So you've chosen,
This is my outer path that I've chosen. Yeah, the
right,
outer
right.
path. And I've got this inner path of the spiritual stuff, but then it was, I was in, okay, I'm glad you brought that up, because I was kind of at a crossroads this spring, because I knew I wanted to do more outwardly, but I just didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. And then I found CAMS, the Copernicus Atmosphere Monitoring Service, and I figured out that I I I I'm very tech savvy, and I've just always have been, and I can figure things out. I've got a scientific mind, and so I figured out how to use CAMS, and I did my first video on posting about methane on April 22nd, and people loved it. And so I did my own research. I looked up methane on Wikipedia, and I read it to people and showed it to them. And I said, look, it comes from rice paddies, and it comes from cow poop, and it comes from this and that. And,
Yeah,
it's not just coming up from the Arctic, from the methane stuff up there. And people loved it. And I said, okay, well, if I'll do it. And so I just started doing more videos, and then people started watching more, and then that encouraged me to have Guy back on, and we did our show at the end of May, called Methane Unveiled, and I gathered a bunch of questions specifically around methane for him to answer. So it was like we were in this virtual classroom, and Guy was teaching us about methane and stuff, and that was a real big hit. And just moved forward from there, and I just started branching out, and then it became a life of its own. And now I feel like I'm working in an accountant's office at tax season.
right. I remember you saying
And
that.
you just can't stop. I mean, and I stopped doing implant removal work for now, because I'm so busy with all of this. And I resurrected my Campfire Chats with Margo. I think that show, when I started it last year, was premature. There wasn't enough audience at that point. But now that I built this audience from the Abrupt Climate Change group, they're really interested in coming and having a safe place to talk about all these things and their experiences and their feelings. And we talk about everything. It's not limited to climate change. We talk about, anything they want to talk about, we talk about it.
Yep.
Except we don't talk about solutions. We're not talking about solutions, because once you hit stage five, you realize at this point the only solutions we can really offer are for ourselves, and how we're going to deal with our own immediate reality.
Yep.
And so I use the serenity prayer a lot. Let's, whatever we can affect in the world, do that, and whatever we can't let it go, and give us the wisdom to know the difference.
Yep.
And I think a lot of people don't really understand that, and it's hard for them to let go.
Yeah. Well,
So that's the outer path, and
yeah.
that's been very fulfilling to me. I don't make any money with it,
Yeah.
and I've started getting a few coaching clients from it, but it's immensely fulfilling, and it's like I'm in my niche. This is what I was meant to do
Yeah.
all my life. It's like everything that I did, from UFO experiences and research, to talking to angels, and I mean, in the hypnosis and stress management and everything. It's like prepared me for right here, right now.
Yeah.
And I am going to be starting my implant removal work back up, and that's more of a working one-on-one with people to help get them cleaned up energetically for, to get a more clean spiritual awareness and reconnection with their divine connection. So I'm going to start that back up in September once the ice is done.
Yeah. Well, I'd say that that's fairly, it seems like a direct parallel to the track that I know Carolyn Baker, my creative partner, for a few years now. She's been writing books about this topic for more than a decade. She has more than 10 books on this topic going on. She's quite an extraordinary kind of pioneer as far as I'm concerned in all of the stuff we're talking about. And for myself, it's very much the same way. We both also offer coaching, and we also are in the habit of creating live events, be it a grief ritual or a full-on weekend of community building and diving deep into a sense of bonding and reconnection at every level with people, because we are so darn separate. That when I was writing my book, The Impossible Conversation, I realized what happened to get us here is we've disconnected from every primary source of meaning in a human life.
Mm-hmm.
So we've disconnected from our deeper selves, from each other, from Earth, and from our own souls.
And we become social outcasts.
Mm-hmm.
We become social lepers.
Right.
Because
By just stepping across that threshold and becoming collapse aware at any level, you're right. It's like a sentence of being, what's the word to be kicked out of a community? I've forgotten it. Anyway.
ostracized.
Ostracized. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I call it taking off the belief reality cap. Because once you take it all, and we all have it, and we all have more than one, and sometimes people have layers. You take one off, and then here's another one we've got to deal with. And when you take that off, it's like you have to reframe your whole reality, because all the stuff, all your beliefs that you based everything on, the premise you based all your beliefs on, was a lie, or it was wrong. And it's like, well, what the hell do you do?
Mm-hmm.
What do you do?
Yeah. So, Margo, one thing I've noticed, and I'd just love to, kind of get your take on it. I've noticed there's, this is such a small and delicate community as far as I'm concerned. Delicate, and I'll explain that in a second. This whole collapse aware community scattered around the world. My experience is that there's no special dispensation that happens when a person becomes aware. That we all grew up in, submerged in this default reality, this business as usual reality that caused all of this. And so all of this means we've been completely separated from these primary sources of meaning. And so we're disconnected from the web of life. And that means that we then crack into this new reality. We have this realization, and yet all we're equipped with inside is still set up for complete and utter disconnection.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm noticing is that there are very few people in the collapse aware community who have any real resources to call on to reconnect with their own inner wisdom, with each other, with the earth, and with their own soul. So I'm just wondering if any of that rings a bell or sparks you to say anything.
Yeah, they don't have tools.
Yeah.
There's an article I wrote on my website. Is called hidden. What's it called? Bless, hidden blessing of suffering, or something like that. And I did a podcast on it. Um, and we come into this world thinking that life is going to be easy, and if we do good, we'll be rewarded, and we go to go to school and get training and go get a job and find the right partner, and life will be good. And you know it's not that's not how it works for most of us. And we all have hardships, and we all have suffering, and that's how we grow spiritually. You don't grow if life is easy. You don't grow if things are given to you. If And so I see it, all of this, as an opportunity for us to look deep within and find our hidden strengths and our hidden talents,
Mhm.
and learning to be more self-sufficient, learning to be less dependent on others. And codependency is a huge one.
Mhm.
And no one can do this for you. No one can make it easier for you. I mean, you got to face the cold hard facts, the cold hard reality of what's happening. And some tools are meditation, or just making sure that you take care of yourself every day, keep on a routine, eat well, get some exercise, um, go out into nature if you want to. If you have animals, spend time with them. If
Yeah.
you have kids that you want to be with, spend time with them. I say, go through a life review of, relationships that you want to heal up, because you have an opportunity. And this is a gift of time that, if you got killed in a traffic accident in 30 minutes, you wouldn't have the time to tell tell someone that you love them.
Mhm.
But you do have the time now. We are given a gift of time and this opportunity. And so I encourage people to think about these things, and think about, letting go of their anger and all their, revenge and hatred and for other people and things, and just let it go. And if you can't, make amends physically with them, spiritually make amends, and ask for help, and ask for the angels to help you to, heal your heart and heal those wounds up,
Yeah.
because those wounds will keep you locked into a lower reality. That anger and everything will keep you locked into a lower frequency, so that when it comes your time to go, it's going to be harder to let go.
Yeah. I'm with you, and I appreciated you listing out those practices and those kind of positive habits that we can get into. And I think I would just add one more to the list at this moment, and that would be to develop a set of practices that involve self-regulation. I'm not a real fan of that jargon, because that's the jargon of the resilience folks who are into the neuroscience and so on. I'm not a big fan of
Right.
that whole conversation, and I guess that's a whole another topic for another day. But what does kind of ring for me is the ability to really expand our toolbox, our inner toolbox, of being able to bring ourselves back to an optimal state, to a state that really has us be home in our own bodies and home in our own experience. Because the outer world is so it's literally like an energetic warfare for our
Right.
attention. Our attention is the coin of the realm, and it's
Mhm.
like it's being sucked away at every possible moment and opportunity. and for me, that's one way to see the need of being able to regulate our own experience and regulate our system so that we can consciously return ourselves to that volitionally created state rather than whatever the default is
Yeah.
that we get in.
It's a state of inner peace,
Sure.
and inner just acceptance that, no matter what's happening in the world around you, you're okay inside yourself,
Hmm.
that you're okay. And no matter what happens to your physical body, it doesn't matter. If you're dying with cancer, or you get shot and killed, or you happen to have a nice peaceful death, it doesn't matter, but because you're okay in yourself, and you feel a deep abiding peace in yourself. And that's important, to feel okay inside yourself and to know that you did what you could do. And I talk to people about, what you do, what you can do, and let go of what you can't do.
Hmm.
And we're all going to be experiencing health issues, because as this world declines, it won't be able to support what we need, to have healthy bodies and everything. And so a lot of us are already experiencing health issues. I am.
Hmm.
It's nothing the doctors can diagnose. I just know that it's unwinding, and, I don't have the energy I used to. I'm very sensitive. I have a lot of allergies. I have to pace myself, and I have to give myself a lot of time between tasks, and I can't push myself. And so it's just something that I've come to in the last few years. And, that it doesn't mean that I'm not a productive person. It's just, I have to focus on what I can do. I can sit and talk to people. I can do videos, but, I'm not going to go out and work a full day job anymore. And I'm not able to go hike anymore. My health is not to that point. And so I think as we face these coming things, we're going to be faced, we're going to be, um, these things are going to be coming upon us quickly, with the health and with the environment around us, that things are going to be limited as to our self-expression. And so, it's more of going within and, really taking that inner path of whatever it is for them.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, self-regulation. Oh, and another thing, was making notes. Some of my clients are using this as an opportunity to get rid of bad habits that they've had all their lives, get rid of addictions,
Mhm.
because they want to be more aware. They don't want a drug in their system, clouding their judgment and clouding their mind and clouding their thoughts. And I think the more sober we can be, the more aware we can be, and the more discerning we can be, the easier it's going to be to deal with whatever comes upon us.
Well, I couldn't agree more. That's definitely my experience. Is as soon as I had my woke moment, and especially after I vetted the material, I really went through a process of learning how to learn about this material so I could either prove that it wasn't wacko, crazy, tinfoil hat, BS, but
Mm-hmm.
that it was actually the real deal. Um, I took it on, as a life practice to be as awake and aware and as deeply engaged with the practices that bring grace and awareness and connection with the web of life as I possibly could. So it's I'm glad to hear that you're experiencing a number of other people
Mm-hmm.
doing their version of that. It's in my experience, I have run across only a small handful. My experience so far is that it's rare enough to have someone interested in crossing that threshold and wanting some support in crossing that threshold. And it gets rarer and rarer, kind of like Paul Chafurka's model. He asserts that there, as you go to level 4 and 5 and so on, you have fewer and fewer other human beings to even interact with.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm very glad to hear your update about your experience of some people making that choice to become more sober and more aware at these times.
Well, and I think it's the mature thing to do. You know, we're an immature species,
Mhm.
and this is how we got into this predicament, because we're immature, and our mental and emotional and spiritual realities did not develop along with the technical realities, and so we've not made good choices down through the eons. You know, it just seems like every juncture point where we had a choice to make with, are we going to take the right path or the left path, with one being one that would be less damaging to the environment, and that would be best for our well-being. You know, are we going to take that path, or are we going to take the path to self-destruction? It seems like we've taken the path to self-destruction on every single one.
Yes.
And it's unfortunate, but it's the way it is, and it's nobody's fault here. It's not my fault. It's not your fault. I mean, we're all victims.
Yeah.
We're all victims, and we've all been lied to. And it's, you know, it's this darkness, and, you know, hopefully we'll see our way out of the darkness.
Yeah. It's, if I may, you've described a little bit about your lineage, the way you approach the study of energetics and so on in your work. And I have a couple of energetic teachers in my lineage that I notice that I'm drawing on that particular part of my history more and more as these times go on. This is truly where the power is in
Mm-hmm.
terms of being a human being and being present in the face of this kind of circumstances. And
It's all energy. Everything is energy.
yes, it is. I'm noticing that in addition to what you just said, that we are indeed all kind of, we've just been born into this flow, and that flow involves a certain amount of victimhood in it. And I notice also that in my particular lineage about the energetics, that there's this one word that's used often is impeccability. And it's kind of the watered down version is, perhaps you remember the four agreements, the dumb,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Yeah.
rules.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I remember. Yes.
Yeah, and they're lovely. You know, that they're great kind of personal development level set of advice or hacks, and they're wonderful and powerful. And I appreciate that he did that. But when I think of the word impeccable, like be impeccable with your word is one of his agreements. There's this impeccability in terms of really owning our experience right now in the moment. So in addition to the things you just said, which I agree, you know, we didn't choose to be born into this fossil fuel driven parade of excess that is taking us over a cliff. But that impeccability in the moment is, you remember, I think we've all heard the stories of I think it's from a Chinese, I don't remember if it's Chinese or Japanese, kind of old story of the person who's hanging at the edge of a cliff, having jumped or fallen off, and he's so present. Instead of, you know, he's got a tiger that's chased him off the cliff, and he's below him on the cliff is obvious death, and he's present enough to realize that there's a small strawberry on the vine that he's holding on to, and that he's present in that moment to taste the strawberry and so on. That's sort of what I'm pointing at in terms of the use of the word impeccable, meaning kind of a razor's edge awareness, level of awareness of and being present in the moment. So I just wanted to add that to what you said, and I thank you for what you were mentioning about really this flow, this river we've all been born into. Absolutely.
And what you just described, I mean, that guy's senses were heightened.
Yes.
He was, I mean, and our senses are more heightened
Mhm.
when we're in crisis mode. And some people are addicted to that feeling with the adrenaline and everything, especially if they grew up in an abusive household. Then they can get addicted to that adrenaline going through. And so we do get in a crisis mode when we're thinking about these things and thinking about the end and looking at the methane and looking at the ice and this and that. And so we are heightened, and we can, we don't want to be carried away with that anxiety, because that can give us that feeling of being overwhelmed, and then just, some people might want to just go end it. And I don't promote suicide. Not at this point. I mean, it's not an option for me. I mean, everybody has to make their own decision as to if their quality of life is, to the point where they just can't take it anymore. I don't judge, but, I think there's a point right before that, like you were saying, where it's like time stands still,
Yes.
and it's the moment between two thoughts. It's the moment between the in breath and the out breath. And if we can stay in that moment and focus there, then that's where you gain enlightenment. That's where you gain awareness. That's where you gain the peace beyond all understanding. And that's where you connect with the God mind, which gives you the greater perspective, and you lose all your fear, you lose all your anxiety, and you realize that you're much more than this, and you embrace the experience.
Absolutely. That is the impeccability of the moment that you just described so beautifully.
Yeah, and once you reach that point, you can bring yourself back to that state. It's a middle state, and you just focus your attention right in the middle, rather than off to the right or off to the left or up or down. Or instead of feeling like you're in the whirlwind, you're the eye of the tornado or the hurricane. You're in the eye. It's completely calm in the center.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
that's where you want to be.
Very much my experience as well. Well said. Yeah. Well, I would like to just revisit a little bit about the exterior, the external side of your world. Um, I think you've made some remarkably great choices. I sure have learned a lot by watching your presentations about, there are these kind of unusual websites that you've gathered to report on for us. And would you mention a few of them so that people I first actually, if you'd start with your own and your various offerings, and so how people can track with you in the various ways and what it is you're talking about in those different modes or channels.
Okay. Well, I'll start with my website. It's margoshealingcorner.com. And I offer hypnosis. I do everything long distance, either on the phone or on Skype. I work worldwide. I'm offering energetic implant removal and empathic healing sessions. That's been very popular. I've been doing that for about 2.5 years now. And I incorporate hypnosis techniques with that. And because what I found is um, when you're in that empathic state and in that trance state, once I clear out the energy field, I'll just give a hypnotic suggestion, and you're right there. It just takes, and the person's healing. A lot of times it's instant the way it works. It's really beautiful. And I also offer one-on-one coaching. Um, those are like 40 minutes long. They're short sessions. I also do star family readings where I go into, I connect with the person's star family. This is for people who are more uh, out there and want to be beamed out immediately, like beam me up, Scotty type thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I connect with the person's star family and communicate whatever messages they have for them, and how to prepare for whatever they need to do. Those are short channeled sessions, only about 30 minutes long. And then if people want to do hypnosis for different things, I'm open to, I can do special, special whatever they want. We can pretty much do it, whether it's past life or stress management or
Mm-hmm.
UFO contactee or you know that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then on my YouTube channel, that started out, that's Margo's Healing Corner as well. That started out as it was going to be strictly for spiritual messages and development. Then I started interviewing people because I like interviewing people and doing shows. And so I've got a whole bunch of interviews from different people and a whole bunch of podcasts from my shows that I put up. And then in in the last year or so, I started just doing articles about the weather and abrupt climate change and things like that. And then in April was when I started doing these climate cast reports and updates, and I'll research an area and then provide a report. Like I did a research Siberia because I didn't know anything about Siberia. So I did a whole video about Siberia and found out a whole bunch of interesting things about that. And then I did another one of my videos that was really groundbreaking was about Novaya Zemlya, which is that little island off the north coast of Russia, which is a military base basically for Russia, and where the largest nuclear bomb that's ever been exploded in history went off. It was 50 megatons. It was the Tsar Bomba, and that was during the Cold War. And I had this theory. I wondered why the Arctic was warming up so much faster than the rest of the world, because it didn't make sense. Why is the Arctic warming up 3 to 5 times faster than the rest of the world? And, I think outside the box. I'm a musician, I've seen UFOs, all this stuff. So I think outside the box. And I thought, well, what could it be? And I started doing this research on Novaya Zemlya, and I found out that, my God, it was one of the major nuclear test sites by Russia during the Cold War. And then I found out that they dumped like all these nuclear reactors in the Laptev Sea, and there's a sunken nuclear submarine down there, and there has to be an effect from all that radiation and all that stuff that went on. And then I found out so I said, now when did that Arctic sea ice really start melting? And it was in the early 60s. And that was right around the time that all of that testing had started. And so my Novaya Zemlya video is called Novaya Zemlya, the smoking gun to Arctic warming, or something like that. That one really rocked me. And then, I got a lot of good feedback from that, and I got a whole bunch of people saying I was crazy and all that stuff. But so, and then I just kept exploring, and every time I find a new website, I bring it to people. But you asked the main ones that I use. The first main one is CAMS, Copernicus Atmosphere Monitoring Services, and I put all the links whenever I do a video. I
Right.
almost always put all the links so that people can go and do their own research. And on that website, that's out of the EU, and they gather data from lots of different reporting agencies worldwide, and it's computer models, and you can look at methane from around the world. It's all global. You can look at methane. uh, I focus on four or five main areas because these are the main ones that people are really interested in, and I can see how they're impacting our lives and our weather, and so I relate it. And so I focus on methane, sulfur dioxide, ozone, good ozone, bad ozone, and what else is it I focus on there?
I just know that
Something
primarily
else.
you're reporting on the ice levels and also methane, particularly have my attention. It's not that the others don't, but those two have always been pretty high on my
And
priority list, and so I appreciate that
yeah, I
work.
recently got interested in really tracking the Arctic sea ice. The NASA worldview is, I just sit there hypnotized with that, and I recently found out that that worldview changes like all day long as they get updated information. So you might look at it like as they're bringing in the data, like from today, it'll change from 11 in the morning till 2 in the afternoon, because like they update like every 3 hours as the satellite data comes in. And so, you know, you might look at it and it appears one way, and then you look a little bit later and it appears another way. And so really, it's not really set in stone until the day after. So, even like the data that I looked at yesterday, if I go back and look at it today, it might look different today than it did yesterday.
Absolutely. Yep.
So I've really dug into that one. And also Climate Reanalyzer is good. That gives you an overview of all the different systems around the world. And it's also computer modeling, and it's from NOAA and a whole bunch of places. And then I use the Navy military website to track thickness of sea ice. And there's a reason that I've chosen that one, is because, did you see my report recently about the Navy's roadmap to the Arctic and how they've got this big plan? You saw that one, right?
I did.
Yeah. So that's why I've defaulted to the Navy for their data on the sea ice, because they have a direct interest on how thick that sea ice is, because they have big plans on developing sea ice routes, and they're going to be acting like policemen up there and making sure that you know everything is peaceful and people do what they're supposed to do. And they've got all these alliances with all these different countries, and it's not just the US, it's the whole world, and they're ready. And oh, did you know this? China, I think it's China, I read some article, I should have bookmarked it, that like in the last few years, China has already been sending ships up through that north route all around. I mean, they're not waiting. I can't hear you.
Thanks.
There you go.
I'm not surprised to hear that at all, and I would just couple that with the news that Russia is sending a number of different floating nuclear reactors for power up into the Arctic Circle for a number of different purposes. And what could possibly go wrong?
Yeah,
Margo,
I love that. Yeah.
I'm afraid that
With all the earthquakes and
yeah,
undersea volcanoes, it's like, well, it's just a recipe for disaster. So it's just a matter of who's going to cause what first. So,
indeed. Margo, our time is just about up, and I just want to thank you so much for your patience with the kind of the glitchy stuff at the beginning of our interview here. And it's been such a delight to learn about your progression through these remarkable times and how you're living your calling. It's very, very inspiring, and I plan on attending a number of those campfire talks, and perhaps someday we can switch roles, and we could you could be the interviewer,
yeah, I'd love to.
and
Yeah,
so on. I just want to kind of repeat what you and I both said at the beginning, which is, this is a small community of people who are willing to speak truth to power, to live the obvious truth that's going on on this planet, and to really dive in and follow the deep, heartfelt, impelling, compelling motivation of living our calling. And so I can clearly hear you doing that. I so appreciate the work that you do, and look forward to our next opportunity to spend time together.
Well, thank you, Dean. I've so enjoyed this. It's just been a delight talking to you. I feel like you're kindred soul on the other end here. And our next Campfire Chats with Margo is going to be next Thursday, August 23rd at 5 p.m. Pacific time. And it will be live streaming over on YouTube, and there will be a chat room over there. But if people want to join us live, it will be on TalkShoe. And I will do a video announcement early next week and there are instructions on how to get in on TalkShoe. It's also a live call-in show where people can call in on the phone just to listen or ask questions. And TalkShoe has just opened up a brand new platform that's fantastic, and I love it. And they have all these call-in numbers from around the world. So no matter what country you're in, there's no excuse. You can call in and join us on Campfire Chats.
Very good. Margo, you take good care of yourself.
Okay.
I want to keep hearing about the good work that you do for as many months and years as we can squeeze out of this life.
Well,
thank you so much for
it is what it is. God bless you and everyone, and power to the truth.
Thank you so much.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks for watching another episode of the Poetry of Predicament podcast, produced by Dean Walker and the Living Resilience Alliance, www.livingresilience.net. Music today from Michael Hedges, as always, and also Port Blue Into the Sea. You may want to check out our sister podcasts, the New Lifeboat Hour with Carolyn Baker on Podbean and at carolynbaker.net. Also, the Impossible Conversation podcast, another channel on YouTube. Thanks so much for joining us. Join us again later for another episode of the Poetry of Predicament.